I see you walking away, but please don't leave me this way. I see fire inside the mountain.
The city of Manila woke before the sun did. Jeepneys rumbled across cracked roads, vendors called out the day's first prices, and smoke from street grills painted the morning air in shades of gray. Amid this noise and movement, a small figure walked barefoot along the edge of the street, a boy no older than 12, carrying a worn guitar held together with tape and faith. His name was Eli Santos, a boy whose life had known hunger more than comfort, and yet whose eyes carried a strange, unshakable light. Every morning, he found a spot near the traffic lights, where cars slowed just enough for someone to hear him sing. His voice, though soft at first, cut through the chaos like sunlight through clouds. It was not perfect, but it was real. It was the kind of voice that carried the sound of living, of surviving. Passers-by would sometimes stop. A mother with groceries would smile faintly. A bus driver would toss a coin into his small tin. A child would stare in quiet wonder. For a few moments, the endless race of the city slowed, as if listening to something it didn't know it had lost: innocence, hope, the reminder that even in struggle, beauty survives. Eli sang not for fame, but for food, for his mother, Maria, who cleaned offices until midnight just to keep a roof above them. She often told him, "Don't stop singing, Anak, your voice is our prayer." And so, he sang every day, even when his stomach was empty, even when rain soaked his clothes. But deep down, Eli dreamed of something more, of a place where people wouldn't just pass by, but truly listen. He didn't know if such a place existed, but he kept singing to find it. And as the morning sun finally broke over the rooftops, the narrator's question lingers in the air like a whisper. Can a voice born in struggle ever rise high enough to be heard by the world? The answer, though still far away, had already begun to echo in Eli's song. Nights in Eli's world were different. The noise of Manila softened, replaced by the hum of insects and the distant rhythm of waves from the bay. Their small shack, made of patched wood and rusted tin, stood in a narrow alley crowded with other lives just like theirs, people who worked all day to simply survive another one. Inside, Maria sat by a flickering lamp, her hands sore from scrubbing floors. She watched her son clean his old guitar with the same care one might give to a sacred thing. The guitar was his most precious possession, a gift from a stranger he barely remembered, a man who had once seen Eli singing near a market and placed the instrument in his hands before disappearing into the crowd. Its strings were uneven, its body cracked, but to Eli, it sounded like hope. Music was his escape. Every evening, he would climb the old fire escape behind their building, his feet steady on the iron rails. From the rooftop, he could see the lights of the city stretching far beyond, a sea of golden stars flickering between skyscrapers and smoke. There, he would close his eyes and sing. Songs he heard on radios, songs he made up himself, anything that carried him beyond those narrow streets. He sang to the wind, to the stars, to a world he longed to touch. In those moments, he wasn't the boy with torn clothes or an empty stomach. He was a performer, free and fearless, his voice carried by the night. Sometimes, neighbors would hear him and pause by their windows. They would whisper, "That boy, his voice could be something great." But dreams like his rarely found wings in places like these. Until one day, as he sang beneath the morning sun, a foreign tourist stopped nearby, camera in hand, eyes wide. He recorded Eli's voice, smiled softly, and walked away without a word. Eli didn't think much of it. Weeks passed since that morning when the tourist had recorded Eli. Life went on as it always did, the same songs, the same corners, the same hunger wrapped in quiet hope. He didn't know that somewhere across the ocean, in a city of glass towers and endless lights, his voice had begun to travel. The video had found its way online, where a stranger captioned it, "The Street Singer of Manila." At first, it reached only a few hundred views. Then thousands. Then millions. People from all over the world commented, hearts, tears, disbelief that such a voice could come from a boy with no stage, no microphone, no shoes. Among those who watched was a producer from America's Got Talent. Late one night, while scrolling through countless clips, he stopped on Eli's face, a boy singing through car horns and chaos, eyes closed, voice trembling yet powerful. Something about it felt pure, untouched by fame or training. Within hours, an email was sent. Then a call. When Maria answered that call, her hands shook. The words felt unreal: invitation, audition, America. She couldn't believe it. Neither could Eli. The boy who had never been on an airplane was being asked to sing before the world. News spread through their neighborhood like fire. Everyone gathered to help. A tricycle driver offered to take them to the embassy. A shopkeeper donated a small suitcase. Street vendors collected coins. Even the children pooled their savings, tiny coins in tiny hands. The night before his flight, Eli stood once again on his rooftop, staring at the glowing skyline. The city that had once felt endless now seemed to whisper goodbye. He closed his eyes and sang softly to the wind, not for coins this time, but for courage. When the plane took off the next morning, clouds surrounded him like a dream. Beneath him, Manila grew smaller, but in his heart, it never left. He pressed his hand against the window, whispering to himself through a silent smile, "One song can change everything." And somewhere deep inside, he already knew, it just had. The studio lights were blinding. The air hummed with anticipation, hundreds of faces, cameras poised, and 4 judges seated behind a long desk, waiting for another hopeful dreamer. Backstage, Eli clutched his old guitar, its wood faded and cracked from years of street corners and rain. He could hear the crowd's chatter through the curtain, feel his heart beating like a drum inside his chest. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage. The world before him felt impossibly big. The floor shimmered beneath his feet, the lights painted his face gold. For a brief second, he froze. Then he remembered his mother's words, "Don't stop singing, Anak, your voice is our prayer." The judges watched curiously. To them, he looked like a shy boy from nowhere, holding a guitar that belonged to another time. The audience waited, some smiling kindly, others skeptical. Then Eli lifted his head, strummed the first chord, and began to sing. It was "Hotel California." The opening note was fragile, trembling like a whisper. But as he sang the first verse, something changed. His voice deepened, carrying years of struggle, loss, and longing. Each lyric rose from his heart like it had lived there forever. The studio, once filled with murmurs, fell completely silent. His voice wasn't perfect, it was honest. It cracked in places, soared in others, but every note told a story, of hunger, of streets, of dreams that refused to die. The judge's expression softened. One leaned forward. Another wiped her eyes. Even Simon's gaze lifted, fixed and unblinking, as if rediscovering what music could feel like. When Eli reached the final chorus, his eyes glistened. He sang as if it were the last song he would ever sing. And when the final note faded, it left behind a silence so powerful that even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Then, suddenly, a golden explosion. Confetti burst from the ceiling as the golden buzzer was hit. The crowd rose to their feet, cheering, crying, clapping. Eli stood frozen in the rain of gold, his hands trembling over his heart. He looked up toward the lights, as if searching for someone. And in that shining moment, he whispered a thank you, not to the judges, not to the crowd, but to his mother, to Manila, and to the voice that had carried him there. The world woke up to his voice. Overnight, clips of Eli's Hotel California flooded every corner of the internet, millions of views, headlines in every language, comments from people who said they hadn't cried in years until they heard him sing. For once, the boy who sang on Manila's streets wasn't invisible. He had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that sometimes, greatness is born in the most forgotten places. Back home, the narrow alleys where Eli once played his songs were alive with celebration. Neighbors huddled around an old TV, its screen flickering in the humid night, showing the moment golden confetti rained over the little boy they all knew. Some clapped, some cried, and some simply stood in awe. In the small shack near the end of the lane, Maria covered her mouth with trembling hands. Her son's dream, their prayer, had reached the world. Days later, Eli returned to Manila. Cameras followed him, but his heart remained the same. He stepped out of the airport not as a celebrity, but as a son, barefoot again, walking into his mother's arms. The moment they embraced, the crowd cheered, but Eli didn't hear it. He only heard her quiet sob, felt her heartbeat, and knew that everything he had done was for this moment. Life began to change. Sponsors offered him education, opportunities, and a real stage. But Eli's first wish was simple: he wanted to build something lasting, something that mattered. With the help of others, he opened a small music school for underprivileged children, a place where kids could sing without fear, where broken guitars still had songs to give. Years later, when people asked him about fame, Eli always smiled softly. "Fame fades," he would say, "but a song that comes from the heart, that never disappears." As the story fades, we see him once more on that same rooftop, the city stretched before him, the sunset burning gold across the sky. He strums the old guitar, still patched, still precious, and sings quietly into the wind. This time, it isn't for coins. It's for every dreamer still waiting to be heard.